Hello and welcome. Excuse me. Hello, chats. Give me 1 second. Let me, my camera oops. I didn't mean to do that. Let me just, might have compensated a little too much. There we go. That brightness is good. Let's turn the volume down. Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. Decided to stream today because I think there's quite a bit to talk about. Or maybe there's nothing to talk about, and I just like talking. In either case, welcome to the stream, brothers. Glad to see you all in here. I just wanted to read some stuff that I was reading like while we were setting up here. Actually, the very first chat comment: the Switch generations don't represent the next generation of gaming, just the next generation of Nintendo games. So I actually want to kind of dispute that like a little bit. Not that I disagree necessarily or not. Because I understand what you mean, right? Because you're talking about, you know, the next generation of technology. Thankfully, the AI here is blurring out how messy my hair is. You're talking about the next generation of technology. You're talking about like big leaps in like 4K gaming, all this other stuff. And I agree. You know, yeah, Nintendo is definitely its own kind of thing. However, I'm going to start the stream off with like an NSP hot take because that is why you guys tune in to my streams. Oh my god, we actually have some subs here on the Twitch chat that I just actually realized. Oh my god. Let me see here. Nico, thank you so much for the tier 1. Black Lion Guard, thank you for the tier 1. Squall A, thank you for the tier 1. 41 months in a row, god damn. And Subtext, thank you for the tier 1. Okay, sorry, I missed you guys, but thank you guys so much for all the subs. So yeah, I want to actually like somewhat drop an NSP hot take on all of you right now. And that hot take is, I think the next generation of video games are going to be portables, period. Oh man, I know like PlayStation fans in particular are hot-headed about that. But yeah, I don't think that like home consoles like in the way that they're currently produced are probably going to be continued. Like it's not probably going to be a thing. Like actually, I would say that PlayStation and Xbox are going to go portable next gen as well. They're all going to be hybrid consoles. If I'm not being explicit enough. Basically, everything is going to be a Switch. There's a few reasons why I think that. See, I agree, but not fully because I think it'll be PlayStation, Xbox do hybrids or two SKUs. Yeah, no. And let me clarify. It'll be either hybrid or two SKUs. I'm not sure which one it'll be. It'll probably be two SKUs. It'll probably be like you'll have like the Pro unit that is a dedicated home console, and then you'll have uh the Switch-like version, Steam Deck-like version. There's a few reasons for that. One, people just want to be able to play the games portably. And the second thing is that especially for Sony, they've completely fumbled the Japanese market. That used to be a very big market for them. And home consoles in general are no longer the move there. It's a big reason why we have the Switch in the first place, is because home consoles in Japan were kind of on their way out. It's why Nintendo was like, okay, we're going to make the Switch. We already have rumors that Sony is working on like a new hybrid like device. So I guess it's not even a hot take so much as like an inevitability that a lot of people are not going to like. We also know for a fact that Microsoft is working on like an Xbox handheld. So like none of this is like necessarily even a take or like an NSP take or like I think it should go this way. It's really just more like judging by the facts and judging by what they're working on. The next generation of gaming is probably going to be portable or hybrid, I should say. And you're going to plug these devices up. And it makes sense for like a lot of reasons. Me personally, as a huge Steam Deck guy, I'm all for it. If I'm completely honest, my Steam Deck gets way more hours of play than my Switch does, just being fully honest about that. The primary reason that my Steam Deck does get more hours of play than my Switch purely comes down to the fact that, you know, I like Nintendo games, but I also like more. I also like more than Nintendo games, right? Um, and generally speaking, whenever I have the opportunity to play a game on either a Steam Deck or a Switch, I'm probably gonna pick the Steam Deck, right? Better resolution, better frame rates, yeah. I mean, it performs better, right? Now that may not necessarily be the case with Switch 2. Switch 2 may outperform Steam Deck. I don't know yet, right? So, if that's the case, then I'm hopping on board and I'll pick up games that run on Switch 2, better. Well, actually, maybe not. Actually, maybe not, because there's still one feature for me personally that Steam Deck still kind of like holds over over the Switch 2, and that's that I can play these games on my PC. So I just really like the Steam Deck ecosystem, right? So I guess it kind of does come down to the games, like the Nintendo games kind of selling me on it. But realistically, even though I say selling me on it, I'm gonna buy the damn thing because I want to play the Smash game that's inevitably coming to to the Switch too, right? And realistically, this is how Nintendo gets me every time. Um, because a lot of their games I can forgo, right? I do like a lot of Nintendo games. Like I like a Fire Emblem, a Zelda, stuff like that. But then Smash is usually like where I cave. It's like where I'm like, okay, damn, Nintendo, I'll buy the new hardware. You got me because I gotta have Smash. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be a gamer household, come over to someone's house, and then there's no fucking Smash, right? If you can choose between the Switch or the Steam Deck for a game, Steam Deck all the way. Switch is gonna be good just for their awesome Nintendo games. Right, right. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? It like really depends. If Nintendo is your number one thing ever, then I say get a Switch. But if Nintendo is not the main thing in which you play and doesn't comprise like the vast majority of games that you are interested in, get a Steam Deck. Because you're gonna get way more value out of it, right? Like if your main thing is like, oh, I want to play like Final Fantasy and like Elden Ring and those sorts of games, which will probably run on Switch too, don't get me wrong. Um, but then what happens? I mean, we'll be in the same situation. Switch 2 will come out, it'll run those games, and then Steam Deck 2 will come out, and it'll also run those games. And also, too, I think for me in particular, like one of the appeals for Steam Deck has always just been um, the fact that I can boot the games up on my PC and keep playing them, right? So right now I've been playing The Witcher 3. I can play The Witcher 3 at 4K 60, not 4K. It's like 3044 by 1444 pixels. So it's like 1440p but 21 by 9. So it's like a long boy. It's ultra wide. But I can play that at 60 frames on my desktop PC, right? And that's amazing. Ultra wide resolution, getting that full curve. It's incredible. If you've never gamed on an ultra wide before, by the way, it's the sickest shit ever, right? When you're getting more like vertical. When you're getting like more vertical, like just like that more horizon line, and you're able to like see things off in the distance, it's incredible. It's super incredible. Works really good with Witcher 3, works really good with like Ghost of Tsushima, and those sorts of games. Any type of like RPG, third person game. Oh my god, dude. That full just, almost like 180. It's incredible. I wanted an ultra wide, but not something I can afford. They're getting a little bit more like affordable nowadays, but yeah, a really good horizontal. Did I say vertical? Yeah, you're right. I mean Wait, yeah, I do mean horizontal. I said vertical. I'm fucking stupid. Don't listen to me. Yeah, if you want more, I said like verticality or something. If you want more horizontality, get a fucking ultra wide. Um, but yes, ultra wides are really good, and if you can game on them, you'll like them. What would be an accurate launch title for Switch 2? So according to the rumors, we're not even getting like games on like the presentation. I had a couple of tabs open to like look at this shit. Um, let's take a look. Hate allegedly hardware. Yeah, so apparently it says here leaker Nate the Hate was first to report that Nintendo allegedly plans to reveal Switch 2 this week on January 16th. This allegedly comes in the form of the hardware focused trailer rather than a launch lineup reveal. This will reportedly come via software focused direct later in February or early March. VGC corroborated the report, as did Verge's Tom Warren. IGN has asked Nintendo for a comment. Nate the Hate added that Switch 2 may launch in May or June of 2025, a release window that VGC corroborated. A new Mario Kart is set to launch, with 3D Mario following in holiday 2025. Other games set to for Switch 2 include Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Switch 2 leaks have come thick and fast. Excuse me? They did what? They did what, chat? Excuse me? They have came thick and fast? Okay. Um, in recent weeks, with CES 2025 featuring a high profile mock up from accessory maker Genki that reportedly sparked interest from Nintendo's lawyers. While Genki's markup did appear to add significant weight to a growing pool of past leaks on what the Switch 2 will be, Nintendo has yet to officially reveal anything about the system, and all these claims are subject to change or total debunking. A formal announcement is expected in the first quarter of this year, Nintendo has said. Oh, this is an interesting poll. Um, which Switch 2 feature are you most looking forward to, chat? Oh, let's see. 4K scaling, larger screen, optical Joy-Con sensor, mysterious C button, faster SD cards, magnetic locking Joy-Con. Okay, I'm gonna surprise you guys. I'm actually gonna go with magnetic locking Joy-Con. Like that's it for me. Because I do find like not that like sliding the Joy-Cons on now is like so unbearable that like, you know, I just feel like it's the feature of all of these that I have the most context for. And also too, like the fact that they would just snap on magnetically to me is pretty dope. Like I feel like that allows you to Switch faster, easier, more convenient, rather than having to like press the little button and like slide it off. So for me, I would go with the magnetic Joy-Con. Really? 4K upscaling. Okay, I feel like that's like not gonna be what people are kind of hoping for though, right? Like I don't we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure it'll work fine. I think that it's good. If you've ever played Xenoblade on Switch, the Xenoblade thing is like so Xenoblade on like Switch is like blurry as fuck. So I'm really curious how that 4K upscaling will help games like that. Games that have like a really low internal resolution. I would like to see games like that get like a nice boost in terms of like that. But then people better not be banking on 4K upscaling because it's not going to be able to do that. Digital Foundry keeps trying to warn people, and that's fine because 4K isn't really needed in that form factor. Yeah, I mean, all I'm expecting is that it will be capable of outputting 4K in certain situations through the use of AI upscaling. And it is not going to be like it's like a 4K device in any stretch of the imagination. Um, that being said, I kind of just want a Switch that's a good 1080p device because right now we don't even have that, in my humble opinion. Um, Breath of the Wild is blurry as fuck. Tears of the Kingdom is blurry as fuck. Xenoblade is blurry as fuck. Um, Anything that is like not a 3D Mario is blurry as fuck on the system. So if I can just get like output that is like a crisp 1080p, like it does not look blurry and like I'm looking at the screen through like, Vaseline and it's like smeared. I'm happy. I'm like not expecting like, 4K 60 from this thing. I'm definitely not expecting 60 frames anything. That's out of the question. Maybe we will get some 60 frame stuff with the DLSS. That would be cool. But genuinely speaking, I just want it to run at like an actual stable 1080p 30, like unironically. Um, that doesn't like dip all over the place and like, I mean, yeah, even still, like even like the most optimized Switch games are still like at this point not like the greatest games ever, I feel like. Because like you playing like Breath of the Wild on Switch, which is probably one of the best optimized games for the system, even still, you're gonna get some nasty um dips on that game. NSP, I just want the games to run thick and fast. Yeah, exactly. Imagine 1080p 60 without blur. Maybe a hot take, but like if we're talking about Switch especially, I will 1000% take 1080p 60 over a 4K scaling anything. Like any day of the week. Like if we're talking about like a good 1080p 60, I would rather have that. I'd probably rather have that over 1440p 30, honestly. Now 1080p, if you're running it on a 1440p or like 4K screen, is it going to be absolutely crisp? No, it'll probably be slightly blurry. But I would still prefer that with some upscaling over, you know, much higher resolution 30. So now I do like both. It's just that it gets to a certain point where it's just like if you are not prioritizing frame rate after the resolution gets to a certain point, then it's just a choppy mess. So funny thing about some Switch games like say Link's Awakening that can run in a stable frame rate, but only if you overclock your Switch. Nintendo doesn't actually use the full potential of the system for longevity or the battery related reasons would be the best bet as to why. I respect it. I get it. Um I wish it was an option though. That you could be like, Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'ma just do it. But I don't know. Like and maybe this isn't the best idea, but I think if they have a Switch Lite that doesn't switch, right? It's like literally a home port, it's like literally a portable that doesn't plug into a TV. I kind of feel like there should also be, and I know we're kind of going in a circle on this, and I know these words are like gonna like burn people's ears, but like a Switch Pro that's like literally like a home console, and it can do like really good 4K upscaling and output games at 60 frames, and maybe has like actual internal storage and not like 32 gigabytes of fuck you. Um, I think that'd be cool. Like, yeah, both of those options, right? You can switch, you can like only be portable, or you can be like, it's a home console, but it's like beefy. But I think that's probably too many options, right? So, other reports suggested that the Joy-Con's alleged sensor maybe turned the controller into a mouse. That is really cool. Meanwhile, alleged retail listings for Switch 2 micro SD express cards have suggested that the new console supports the newer standard of SD cards in the 256 and 512 gigabyte form. Following the appearance of alleged images of the Switch 2 internals, fresh images allegedly showing the next generation console's Joy-Con appearing online earlier this month. The images show a left Joy-Con um, were reportedly first posted to a Chinese social media website before they made their way to the Nintendo Switch 2 subreddit in Western social media. They include larger SL and SR buttons than on the Switch Joy-Con, which you'd expect given the Switch 2 is reportedly a bigger console than the original. These new Joy-Cons allegedly ditch the rail-locked method used by the current Switch in favor of electromagnetic suction controllers. In September, unverified images, a mix of computer-aided CAD images, printed circuit boards, PCB, photos that were said to have originated from a Chinese website before making their way onto Reddit, depicted a device similar to the existing Switch console, but with a larger screen and magnetic Joy-Con. There is reportedly a USB-C port on the top and the bottom of the console too. That's really interesting. Can you use both? Right? Can you just like that's really interesting. I didn't know about the USB-C on the top and the bottom of the console. I like that. I do wish that the Steam Deck also had a USB-C on the bottom because you have to do like some awkward solutions whenever you dock a Steam Deck because the USB-C is on the top. And sometimes the USB-C on the top is nice. I kind of like it for some situations, but then I also kind of like the bottom USB-C too. So that's actually really interesting. I wonder how that's going to work, if they're both going to be able to charge, if they're going to be able to do that. The USB-C is just for charging, so it's so people can play while plugged in, while in tabletop mode. As currently, it's awkward doing that with Switch. Yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's actually perfect. That's actually a really good feature. Um, accompanying images, accompanying the images was an alleged specifications list that mentioned 12 gigabytes of RAM. The original Switch has 4. For context, the Steam Deck, I believe, has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Can someone verify that for me? Yeah, Steam Deck has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Switch 2 is going to be less powerful overall than Steam Deck, but it does suggest that it will have less memory. So That might mean something. And 256 of internal gigabytes of internal storage. The original Switch had 32. 256 is still not dick, bro. Like, come the fuck on, Nintendo. Jesus Christ. That is like at least maybe that's two games where the 32 gigabyte one is like also two Switch games, actually. So 256 is still like nothing. I just don't understand why Nintendo doesn't give you like a little bit more memory. Like with these systems, like a little bit more storage, dude. It's not even like come the fuck on, dude. At least 512 gigabytes. I just don't understand. Like 256, you know. To be fair, the lowest Steam Deck has 64 gigabytes of. Yeah, that's true. It does, but that's true. I suppose that's fair. But damn it, they should also give more memory too. At least that's a more powerful con. Low storage is entirely to cut costs. That in their partnership with SD card makers for this special Nintendo branded products. Ah, I see. That makes more sense to me, especially is because they have those partnerships with the SD card makers, right? And so them being in each other's pockets there, I think that makes sense. There's a new C button on the right Joy-Con allegedly, but no one seems to know what this is for so far. I'm just glad that the C button is back. That there's a C thing on there, right? That's a very uniquely Nintendo thing, is for there to just be a C thing on there somewhere. I don't know what it's going to do, but that's interesting. We also have a patent filed July 2023, but published for the first time last week, that describes AI image upscaling technology that would keep video game download sizes small enough to fit on a cartridge while offering up to 4K textures. That's interesting. I actually feel like this paragraph somehow says the most in terms about like something like significant and new. So for starters, I remember people talking about this. I thought this was like DLSS, right? I didn't know it was like upscaling textures. So that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure the console itself has DLSS as well. But I did see like some discourse around this. And I didn't know that we were talking about upscaling textures. That's interesting. Um, so I'm sure that some of you will be like, "Oh, Nintendo is based because they want to keep the file sizes smaller because games nowadays are too big," and I think that's fair. I think a lot of people would probably agree that video game file sizes are too big, and you probably also say that they're based because a lot of you still love physical media, and this paragraph here does seem to suggest that they are going to continue to prioritize physical media over just digital downloads, although they do want to keep download sizes small. So it's just kind of an all around win on that sense. It is interesting that they want to use like an AI technology in order to upscale the textures, though, in order to keep them from being too large in terms of file size. But the only issue that I would have with that is that I feel like a lot of textures being upscaled through AI does distort texture work a little bit. Like if you look closely at textures or anything, any image really that has been ran through an AI does change it a little bit. Like not like in terms of like what it is, but if you look closer at like the pixels, like the brushstrokes, things like that really closely, there is a little bit of like AI-ness distortion to the image. That's not to say that AI upscaling is not really valuable and not a powerful tool. We've seen things such as like, the Final Fantasy PS1 games get upscaled by fan mods and had really good results. However, if you look at things like Mogurimon and other things, typically they still had like a lot of hand work that went into polishing those upscales after they were done. So to be clear here, I'm not like anti AI upscaling. In fact, I think upscaling is like one of the best AI technologies. However, I would find it a little bit concerning if we're going to take an AI and broadly apply it to a ton of games and use that for texture upscaling, potentially in places where texture upscaling may actually kind of harm the art style of the game or may cause it to look a little bit weird or off. But I don't think we've seen this technology. This technology may already kind of exist in some places. Um, most GPU technology nowadays is AI, so I don't feel like we're really making tremendously stronger GPUs anymore. It just feels like we are just getting um, better artificial intelligence integration into the GPUs, and that is what's making them output more. The C button is a weird one. Also, leaks about the Pro controllers show an audio jack for a headset. So people are thinking Nintendo is finally going to add some community features, in-game voice chat options, etc. Oh, thank fucking God. Nintendo is finally in the Xbox 360 era. Let's go. There's a patent out there for the upscaling. It's been out there for a while. It's some proprietary Nintendo DLSS. People are assuming that Nvidia aided them in it due to them being one of Nvidia's biggest commercial customers. Yeah. Speaking of GPUs, how much are you considering one of the 50 series cards? Oh, I'm getting a 50 series card for sure. Um, Like, there's not even a question. I'm just debating if I'm going to get like the 50 Ti Super, 5070 Ti Super, or if I'm just going to go for the 5080. But like I said, I have a protection card, protection card, protection plan on my card, and it's like one of those things where if anything happens, or if I just like basically say like, hey, things not running like how it used to, I can take it in and like get like full store credit back for my GPU, and that lasts for like 2 years. So I'm going to use that. And then I'm going to get my 50 series card. Now the question is, do I get the 5070 Ti Super, which will probably be about the same price, right? So that's almost free, basically. Or do I get it through? Or do I go and get it the 5080, and I have to pay like $100, $200 to upgrade, but then I get like a way better card? I don't know. What did I buy that through? Micro Center. That's the best place to do it. Are you gonna play Monster Hunter Wilds next month? Yeah, I was thinking about playing it. I want to play it on PC in particular because I feel like that's gonna be the better place to play it, and I also am not gonna have to pay for online in order to play it. So it does indeed seem like PC is gonna be like the place to play. NSP, what card do you have now? I have the 4070 Ti. 4070 Ti Super, to be more precise. So I spent like $800 on that card, and there's a temptation to me because again I'm gonna get all of my money back through the trade in. So I'm like, I spend $800 on that. Do I just get the 50 series equivalent, or do I get like, or do I just put like a little bit more and I get the 5080? And then I'm like really locked in. And then I buy another protection plan, and then I get the 6080. And we just keep going and going and going. And I always got the latest graphics card, but that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. The new DLSS features seem pretty good. That Digital Foundry video they tested was 5080, not even 5090. Seems sexy. Yeah. KHY9, thank you for the $10 tip, man. Switch 2 hardware is going to be fantastic looking at it. The Joy-Cons might be computer mice. The dock might be able to stream images from the tablet so you can do uh, DS, 3DS, Wii U games on NSO, and it might be able to do real-time asset upscaling. Dude, it does look pretty cool. It does look like they went like incredibly ham on AI features and being able to do that. I do think it would be awesome, if you're able to play DS and 3DS games, Wii U games, that'd be awesome. And them able to keep it backwards compatible. I know Nintendo doesn't like really want you to ever own games, which is actually very funny because people will be like Nintendo is like pro ownership because they're pro physical, but then I'm like Nintendo is like the least pro ownership dog in terms of like keeping the game. Sure, like if you like own the physical copy, yeah, but like in terms of like you owning it any other way, are you buying the game once and owning it for life to be able to play on like the latest hardware? No way. But dude, I agree that it looks really cool. Um, I'm probably gonna purchase it day one. Probably gonna purchase it day one. And also too, the big rumor is that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are coming to Switch 2. So that's gonna be really interesting for some pretty obvious reasons. But the biggest obvious reason is what I'm most curious about is the sales in Japan. What are Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth on Switch 2 going to sell in terms of Japanese units? Maybe Rebirth will finally hit 3 million. I don't know what Rebirth's at. Rebirth could be already be past 3 million, but it might be less than that. Yeah. In either case, it might be something that can push Rebirth to a new major milestone. And I also think it'll just be like really telling in terms of where Final Fantasy is. It's a little bit interesting that there's no rumor about Final Fantasy 16 coming to Switch 2. Now, part of that might be that Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth, but especially Remake, is a lot easier to run. And that's also probably because that it's built for PS4, but in particular they're built on Unreal Engine, right? So even Rebirth, I imagine, will have an easier time running on Switch 2 because Unreal Engine is very scalable. It is built to allow a high end game to be scaled down and run on a lower end system. So I do kind of understand like why you may expect to see Final Fantasy VII re-trilogy games, but then not Final Fantasy 16 running on the system. 16 is probably just a lot beefier. And also too, Square Enix has been saying that they're kind of on a mission right now to get the game working on Steam Deck. They announced that they're trying to optimize Rebirth so that it runs well on Steam Deck. And so I assume that they wouldn't mention that if early progress on getting the game working on Steam Deck wasn't looking pretty good, right? Because they wouldn't want the game to launch and then it just doesn't, it just runs like ass on Steam Deck. We'll know in like, what is it? Like, does the game launch on the 23rd? Yeah, we'll know on like the 23rd when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launches on Steam how good it actually runs on Steam Deck. but hopefully it runs pretty well. If it does run well, that'll give us a pretty good indication on what we can expect for Switch 2. The part about the size pad makes sense to me is that NVIDIA presentation for the 5000 series card included a part about AI texture upscaling to help with game sizes and RAM usage. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, it kind of seems like the future of graphical processing is just AI, right? AI frames, AI resolution, AI textures. It seems like everything is just AI, right? Like, um, and like the whole game will just be fucking AI. This is the more graphical processing. I mean that is what it seems to be. AI textures is a cost saving mechanism. Upscaling is a big deal for the devs. Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like, more traditional graphical processing is kind of like on the way out. And like we are just gonna be, yeah, more than graphical processing. Oh, okay. We got to keep the art of native optimizations alive. I feel like native optimizations is going to be a thing of the past, though, at this point, because it does seem like we are moving into the age of, you know, just ship it fucked up and then crank up the DLSS, boys, and then that's how you get the frame rate and resolution that you want. So, native optimization still exists. It'll just be in tandem with AI stuff, right? Because after all, you can't upscale like 50 frames into like 200, right? Or not 50. I say 50. I meant like, or I said 15. Yeah, I meant like 15 frames into like 200. Well, maybe you can actually. I don't know. Because that's what DLSS 4 or whatever is looking to do. But like, yeah, after a while, you do need some native frames before you are just like upscaling an image that isn't even moving. So you need some native frames. Um, this is also a pretty big one, right? This is a pretty big rumor here that Metal Gear Solid Delta is going to be releasing on Switch 2 this year. Nicholas14, thank you so much for the tier 1. Thank you for being with us for 31 months, dude. Holy shit. Appreciate you and thanks for joining us today. How are you doing, man? So let's take a look at this one. KYH9, thank you for another $10 tip, man. I appreciate it. As a side note, I want Nintendo to channel their inner hate and reject any attempt at putting FF7 Remake Rebirth Part 3 on Switch 2, just out of spite for them bringing FF7 to PS1 back in the day, because it'd be super funny if they were still mad. That would be funny. Them just being like, nah, you know what? Fuck it. We don't need your FF7. Okay, but that was kind of like the height of like Nintendo's like arrogance as a company back then, was like kind of like when they felt like they didn't need anybody, and then they quickly realized that they did need people. Anyway, let's take a look at this. It appears Konami is set to release Metal Gear Solid Delta on the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 this year. That is this is according to leaker Nate the Hate, who's been in the news for his other Switch 2 reports. The news comes from his latest podcast, which also says that Nintendo will reveal its Switch 2 console this week. Other third-party games I have heard include Metal Gear Solid Delta, which is coming out in 2025, Nate the Hate said. Right now, it lacks a release date for all platforms, and I'm hopeful that maybe it's a day and date release when it does come to Switch 2. Because if that game, let's say, comes out in summer 2025, there is no reason it shouldn't be day and date. In addition to Metal Gear Solid Delta, Nate the Hate says that Ubisoft will be releasing a number of games on the new system. Those games reportedly include Assassin's Creed Shadows, Assassin's Creed Mirage, The Division, and even Rainbow Six Siege. As always, none of the above information has been confirmed. Okay. Well, there you go. Metal Gear Solid Delta on Switch 2 would also be really cool. So, um, wait, who's underestimating Switch? Oh, wait, you're talking about Steam Kev. Okay. Delta sounds like it's gonna run 10 frames per second. I think it'll run 30 if it's true. A lot of these games, a lot of these games can run just fine on it, I'm sure. Like I said, like you would think that Steam Deck wouldn't be able to run the games that it does, but it does, right? Like and that's without the optimizations that Switch 2 is going to get. Switch 2 is going to get special optimizations that Steam Deck is not going to get, right? And it also has all these AI features too that Steam Deck currently doesn't have. And so, I mean, the Steam Deck 2 is probably a year or two away, right? So we're probably going to get a Steam Deck 2 that does have these features and will probably do that, but I feel like Switch 2 is probably going to be a little bit better than people are anticipating just due to the fact that it's going to have, you know, a lot of these AI features that are going to make it run a little bit better. So, yeah, I'll say it's I'll say it's I'll say it's probably going to do a lot more than people were expecting. But it's probably not going to do as much as like people's like wildest dreams, probably not, right? Like if you're expecting it to be like this 4K system and like, Nintendo's going to be like a tech powerhouse or anything like that, I'm expecting something along the lines of a PS4 Pro, but like on a handheld. And even then that might be asking a little bit too much. But yeah, I'm expecting something that's like PS4 Pro-ish. I want FF14 to be playable on Switch 2 so I can do my dailies while on commute. I mean that might be something that's better suited for Steam Deck if you have one. Well, yeah. So honestly, like anything third party, I would still recommend like a Steam Deck for. Um, that is maybe. I mean, maybe not. We'll see when Switch 2 comes out, and yeah. You really want to do dailies on train Wi-Fi? Hey man, some cities do have good train Wi-Fi, but I feel like the stream has been a pretty good case for the Steam Deck. I'm a Steam Deck fanboy, right? Like, so I'm gonna be honest. I'm a PC fanboy. I'm a Steam Deck fanboy. Um, so you're always gonna get propaganda when you come to my stream for PC and Steam Deck. I'm always gonna redirect you and be like, you thought this was a PlayStation stream, but actually it's a fucking Steam Deck stream. NSP is Steam Deck meat writer. I am, dude. I ride Steam Deck for Steam Deck. I do 100%. I'm just like Steam Deck is just awesome, awesome platform. I'm a really big fan. Then there was this article from The Verge. Everything we know and think we know about the Switch 2, leaks and rumors supported by multiple third-party manufacturers make up the bulk of info. I haven't really read this yet, so let me just like kind of skim through and see like if there is actually anything good going on here. Nintendo's announcement of the Switch successor is imminent. Just how imminent? What else do we have here? Is there anything like juicy in this? Nah, this is a bullshit ass article. But this isn't. This isn't, and it had something interesting in it. Yeah, so there's going to be like an Xbox Developer Direct on January 23rd, same day that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth heads to PC. And there is going to be something interesting there. Now, obviously, the most interesting thing to us immediately is that Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is going to be there, based, right? Like, we're all excited for that. However, there is one other thing that is really exciting at this Xbox showcase, and it's this right here. There's also a mysterious fourth game, and I won't spoil what it is, but our source indicates that it is a new entry in a legendary Japanese IP, which has decades of history, and it should make a lot of fans happy. Indeed, Microsoft has won some strong support from the region lately, including from studios like Square Enix for Final Fantasy, and Hoyoverse for Genshin Impact, and Sega Atlas for Persona, and we suspect this new game will help further that trend. So, chat, what the fuck do you think it's going to be? I'm gonna drink some water while you guys talk about it. It's unironically Echo the Dolphin. Sega filed 2 new trademarks for it. No way. Okay. But I don't think Echo the Dolphin like really fits that. Is Echo the Dolphin like really a Japanese IP with decades of history that would be described as legendary and would make a lot of fans happy? I don't know. And I don't think you would use it in the same breath as like Final Fantasy, Genshin, and Persona, right? Like, um, also it's very funny that Genshin is here. I guess the region that they're talking about is like Asia more like rather than Japan because Genshin is Chinese, but I'm probably just being nitpicky there. No, I'm not even joking. Yes, Echo is a Sega Japan IP with decades of history. You got to remember these advertisements really overinflate these announcements. I mean, that would be like a massive overinflation. I feel like if it's Echo the fucking Dolphin, I feel like that's like a huge overinflation. That would be like I don't even know, man. That would be like I just got word of a brand new AAA Square Enix game that's coming out soon. Um and it is going to change everything. Square Enix fans are going to be so happy whenever they see this. And then it's like fucking foam stars or something. I don't know. I mean, it could be, but that's like, I feel like that's like a huge inflation. You may not be wrong, but if that is the case, like I'm gonna kind of be like, bro, what the fuck? Yeah, I know Sega has like their whole revival of IP thing. You're not wrong. It's just like I would be kind of like mind blown if it's fucking that. Um, Sega historically also has a good partnership with Xbox. Bro, and that's exactly why I am predicting right here, right now, I'm going to leak the game to you guys. That is going to be announced. I have heard this from a reliable source that speaks to me in my head all the time. And the voices have told me that the game that is going to be revealed on the 23rd is going to be Persona 6. The demons have told me. And who better to know about Mega 10 than demons themselves, chat? The demons have informed me that Persona 6 is finally ready to be shown off. And it is going to be done at the Xbox Developer Conference or Developer Direct, whatever the fuck they call it. I mean, the way they hype it up is like feels like it should be that. Um, and I do believe that P6 is going to be announced here. I don't think they would have named Persona in the article if it was another Persona game. It's true, but Sega does have a really good partnership with Atlas, right? So, who's to say? You're probably right. It's probably not Persona 6. It probably is Echo the fucking Dolphin. And that's like that's probably it. Of course, we're not even like I think we're thinking like inside the box, right? Because we're thinking JRPG. It just says Japanese game, which again, Echo the Dolphin. So, Final Fantasy 17, it is like not Final Fantasy 17. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it is any game in existence other than Final Fantasy 17. I wish it was Final Fantasy 17. Almost as bad as I wish it was Persona 6, which it's probably Echo the fucking Dolphin, like Crossy said. But I wish it was Persona 6 or Final Fantasy 17. Persona 6 is not unlikely, right? Like Persona 6 is not unlikely. In fact, we kind of know that it's going to be announced sometime this year. Like a lot of like reliable rumors have kind of surfaced that P6 is ready-ish to show. It's like heading like toward like that final phase of development and localization, so it could be P6. How much would it suck though for Square Enix if it was P6, right? That would suck so much ass. Like, let me elaborate. Imagine on the day that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is supposed to come to Steam, it gets blown the fuck out by like a Persona 6 announcement and like it gets drowned it out basically. Oh my god, dude. That would suck. That would suck so much for Square. Tactics or FF9 remake? No, no, no. If we're reading this like blanketly like how it is, if we're taking it literally, they say that it's a new entry, I guess, in a legendary IP. I To me that doesn't read a remake. Maybe it is a remake of something. I don't think it's a remake of something though. It seems to be describing something that's brand new. So I don't think it's a remake. Just based on the wording and the vibes, I could be wrong. That's just my interpretation. But it sounds like a new mainline entry of something. I also have another guess here that maybe people aren't thinking about because again, it says Japanese IP. We all want it to be a JRPG, but Japanese IP does not mean JRPG. Is there any Resident Evil fans in the house? I think that there's a strong possibility that this is RE9. I don't even think we even considered that, right? That's a Japanese IP that's legendary and has years of history, decades of history, right? So RE9. That would be that would be my logical guess for something that is hype and probably realistic is RE9. I feel like if it was Persona, it would have leaked. People are too too weird about Persona. Persona 3 Reload leaked like a fuck ton. Echo the Dolphin trademark renewed as Xbox Developer Direct teases long running Japanese franchise as its secret reveal. Could it be happening, Echo Bros? Oh shit, Crossy, you might be right. You might be right. Okay, we have like this one's from Windows Central, this one's from Vice. And so the hopium is tasting an awful lot like salt water today. While I know the chances of this happening are slim to none, it seems ironic after that shortly after Windows Central teased information about a fourth announcement at the upcoming Xbox Developer Direct, news about the renewal of the Echo the Dolphin trademark happened. Does this confirm Echo the Dolphin news at the Direct? No, but we can only hope and dream that it does. Yes, I know I'm huffing Echo the Dolphin Copium, but just let me dream, please. Originally reported by Windows Central, there are plenty of things to be excited about when it comes to the Xbox Developer Direct, as quoted directly from the article itself, which is the quote we just read. But to further muddy waters, the public trademark for Echo and Echo the Dolphin officially went live today. Sure, they were renewed on December 27, 2024, but doesn't that mean anything we have dreams for now, does it? But that doesn't mean anything we have dreams for it now, does it? Sure, it's more likely that we'll see some Resident Evil or maybe even Dino Crisis news at the Developer Direct, but wouldn't it be something to see a brand new Echo the Dolphin game? So while it is hard to pinpoint exactly which long running Japanese franchise will show up at the Xbox Developer Direct, we'll only need to wait a few more days to officially find out after a pretty stellar Game Awards showing. It seems nothing is off the table anymore. I mean, technically, Beautiful Joe has decades of history, and Clover is a new studio. The hype just keeps building up for this showcase. In what could be Xbox's best showing in years. Wouldn't it be sick to finally get some Kingdom Hearts 4 news, though? Maybe not if you're Dwayne, but everyone else will be totally stoked. Speculation is about to be crazy for the next 10 days or so, isn't it? We can all dream. Well, fuck me. Dog, it's Echo the fucking Dolphin. That's funny though. I feel like, yeah, they're gonna have a lot of people that are like, yo, what the fuck? Whatever that gets announced, because there's gonna be a lot of people that are like, we thought you guys were gonna announce Final Fantasy 17 Bloodborne 2, and yet you announced yet you announced Echo the Dolphin. It's going to be Stranger of Paradise 2? God, I hope the fuck not. I hope not. I'm a hater of that game, but like genuinely speaking, I do wish there's a good Final Fantasy Soulsborne title. But yeah, it's just not SOP, unfortunately. But I do wish that like one day we could actually get like a good FF Soulsborne. like actually good, and not just like a bunch of enemies in like a square room and like really shit graphics and terrible optimization and all that other shit. Yeah, I know all the chat messages uh about okay, for all of you saying that FF shouldn't be a Soulsborne or it shouldn't be Soulsborne FFs, you also better not be a big fan of 16 because that's a Devil May Cry like hack and slash. So, if you can enjoy a Devil May Cry like hack and slash, I can also say that an FF Soulsborne would be kind of cool, like a legitimate FF Soulsborne. So, yeah, I'm gonna draw that line right there. Um, a Soulsborne would be great in Evil's End Times world. Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think that Stranger of Paradise had like the concept right generally, but I would have just actually. I would have just actually done like a Final Fantasy One reboot with like the Warrior of Light, and I wouldn't have done whatever the fuck they did with the first game's art style. Stranger of Paradise is a better action game than 16. I actually don't disagree. I do enjoy Stranger of Paradise more as an action game, but yeah. How evil would it be if SE makes a turn-based FF spin-off? I don't think that'd be evil at all. I think that's like the smartest thing they can fucking do, actually. I think they should have been done that. I think that there should be an FF like offshoot and or like even calling it like a spin-off necessarily may not even be like the best word. It should be like a Splinter series, right? Like a legitimate Final Fantasy of its own that is also considered like a mainline thing. Isn't that what Bravely Default is? Bravely Default is Bravely Default. They should make like a game that's just like actually it's called Final Fantasy and it's turn based and there's airship and it's not called something else like Octopath Traveler or Bravely Default or something like that. It's called Final Fantasy and they make it like Final Fantasy. And I mean like and I don't mean like I guess I mean more like PS1 Final Fantasy in particular or PS2 era Final Fantasy because that's kind of like what's missing because they have games now that I think are like Super Nintendo Final Fantasies, but I don't think they have games that are like the PS1 era Final Fantasies. Right? Like in fact, I would go as far as to say the only one that I think exists is like Fantasian. Right? Like Fantasian is something that's like very close to like that PS1 era FF. And I feel like they haven't made anything in the PS1 era FF in a long time. So I'm just like, why isn't there a spin-off series that fills the void of like PS1 era FF? Legions, what's up, my guy? Yeah, IDKY, Final Fantasy is so stuck on trying to be action when the to get the modern audience doing games like Metaphor and are doing way better than FF right now. Well, I guess it would depend on too because Metaphor is like so much less expensive to make than like a Final Fantasy game too. Like Final Fantasy is like tremendously expensive, so um I suppose that well, I think they would have to cut down on like the cost of their visuals too, because that's probably like the biggest thing. Um but yeah, I don't know. We haven't gotten a sales update for Metaphor either. So I don't know if it's necessarily outselling it because part of their business model is also they just make games way cheaper than like what Final Fantasy has to, right? Because Final Fantasy makes a really expensive ass video game, and Atlas makes very inexpensive ass games. Atlas makes very cheap ass games that have things like metaphor, like pre-rendered ass backgrounds for certain locations, and half the game is not voiced, and uh, the game looks like it was made in 2813, like a late PS3 game, if that. But it works. It works, and yeah, they don't have to sell like a trillion units, right? I get that Bravely Default is FF. Like I get that argument and that it started off as like being a continuation of the style of games for 3 and 5. Um at the same time though, like there's two things. One, people legitimately do buy things purely because they're called Final Fantasy. And yes, it does matter if it's called Final Fantasy because so many people will or will not buy something purely on the predication of the name Final Fantasy. Two, we can talk about like if we talk about Final Fantasy as defined by gameplay, we could also then say that most games post 10 are not Final Fantasy, right? So I would then say, is Final Fantasy the name or the gameplay? Because if it's the name, then Bravely Default's not Final Fantasy. But if it's the gameplay, then something like FF16 or 13 are not Final Fantasy, right? So is it the name or is it the gameplay, right? The style of game. So I do think it has to be called Final Fantasy because the consensus seems to be that the thing that has the name Final Fantasy is the thing that is Final Fantasy. That seems to be the way people assess this, and not that the uh, the gameplay is the thing. Unfortunately, so I do think that they should continue that PS1 gameplay on, and they should have it in a thing that's called Final Fantasy because a lot of people will not buy it if the thing is not explicitly called Final Fantasy, and they will not accept it as a Final Fantasy if it is not explicitly called Final Fantasy. But if it's a Final Fantasy in everything but name, you know, then it's still not acknowledged as part of the series. So I'd argue that Final Fantasy is in essence one that some games outside the series have, and one that some games within the series don't have. Yeah, I mean, I would agree at this point too, but I would also argue that for Square, that's probably a bad thing because it would be like I don't know if like for example, if iPhone was just like a vibe. I'm doing this purely from like a capitalist POV, like a corporate marketing POV. If iPhone was just like a vibe, it'd be very bad for Apple, right? Because then you'd have like all these other like basically Android phones that are coming out, and it would just be like, yeah, but it has the iPhone vibe. That would devalue like what iPhone is from the perspective of Apple, right? And it would just make the mainline iPhone kind of like irrelevant in a way because it would just be like, well, the new Galaxy, the new Google Pixel, it has iPhone vibes. It's iPhone coded, and therefore, like it has the spirit of iPhone in it, and yeah, and so I can just give my money to somebody else, right? So from an artistic perspective, I get what you're saying, and I probably agree. But like if we're looking at it from that capitalist business POV, then like if it's just an essence or a vibe, and that's like strictly how we define it, then like anyone can kind of come along and just make the thing, and that means that you don't proprietarily own it, which from that profit-seeking lens kind of devalues it, right? So, um, I missed my chance to single-handedly say Final Fantasy. My opinion could have done it. But yeah, so I have a few controversial takes with Fantation. My hottest of all, though, is that it's Uematsu's weakest OST. Does not compare to his earlier FF work and absolutely does not compare to his previous stuff at Mistwalker. The battle themes being bland, boring white noise I have heard in an RPG. Makes sense why they added FF battle music in the port. You're not wrong, honestly. You're not. It is Uematsu's weakest. And that's not to say that doesn't have some good music in it, too. But like in terms of battle themes in particular is like Fantasian's weakness, and I didn't really realize it fully till like I started playing Neo Dimension, and yeah, I just think that he's got like whatever he's been suffering with, he's had like some health issues, and he's older now, and that's just it's just how it is. Um, And yeah, it seems like he really pushed himself to do like one last OST. And it probably just wasn't really in him, like, health and physicality wise to like really push it out. But there's a couple of tracks on Fantasian's OST I do like. But yeah, the FF music there did help in terms of the battle music, because the battle music in particular is kind of where Fantasian as a game's like the roughest. Ruger, thank you so much for the super chat. SE has changed the FF formula drastically um, since 10, since they are trying and failing to find a game that finally outsells OG FF7. I mean, they've come semi close twice with two games, and those two games are Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 15. I know, like, what is Final Fantasy 15 doing next to those two games? Very well marketed game. I say ironically with this big ass Noctis right behind me with like his sword pointed at me. But 7 and 10 were just on like a completely different level. To that point, I wish they really made more out of Rebirth's combat and marketing. Like, look how much people chase the loop of Souls games. Now it's been branded in a way. I agree, Subtext, and I think that is going to happen if they keep going with Remix combat. I think they need to keep pushing it and branding it and like making it a big deal, right? What I don't think anyone else like really emphasizes enough about like re-trilogy combat is that you have a highly praised combat system that is unique to Final Fantasy, that most Final Fantasy fans, even like some of the diehard purists, like unless you go to the absolute fringe of turn-based purists like opinions, most people love re-trilogy combat, right? It's proprietary. It matches the brand identity in a way that fans have been wanting since post 10. It offers challenge in a way that I'm gonna I'm gonna say the word. I'm gonna say the word. There's gonna be comments on the stream VOD for me saying the word. It offers challenge in the way that an audience that exists in 2025 seeks from combat. And um yeah, so it just seems to hit all of the heads that you'd want it to hit. And so I think if they just keep going and keep making more re-trilogy combat and keep improving on it and offering new things and experimenting with it just like the Souls did, they can really, really make it something that people like crave and it gets popular, right? Keep in mind, Persona didn't get more popular because they switched to something else, right? It got more popular because they kept making better Persona. Persona 4 and 5 are massively popular, right? But you know why Persona 4 and 5 are massively popular? because they kept making better Persona 3, which is what from like a gameplay perspective 4 and 5 are. They're better Persona 3, right? Like they're very much a direct continuation of that. They didn't suddenly say, "Okay, we want to make Persona more popular, so we're going to like completely like, well, I guess they did with 3. They did completely switch the system, but then they stayed with it and refined it. They found something more popular and then they stuck with it, right? So, but that would not have happened if Persona 3, 4, and 5 were all completely different games. Again, I often use God of War for this example too, because God of War also did a radically different change. But God of War didn't just like radically change again during Ragnarok. Zelda did the same thing. Resident Evil did the same thing. Hell, you could even argue that Mario did the same thing with 3D Mario and that transition. And so, I mean, yeah, like every Mario game now is still, every 3D Mario is still Super Mario 64, like mechanically. It's just a better version of that. Um, with unique twists. And so reinvention is necessary, but the idea of like we're just going to keep reinventing every single time and we're never going to have a new identity ever is just a fool's game, and it doesn't establish an identity. It's good to have a new identity, but you have to stick with the new identity for a while for it to even be a new identity. Like you can't just be like you can't just put forth the new identity and then be like we're going to do another new identity and we're going to do another new identity and we're going to do another new identity. You do have to at some point say this is the thing that we're sticking to. So Crossy says, I have two thoughts on the whole FF thing. Primarily, FF is just a brand, a name, a thing to slap on a product to make it sell. People don't need to like it, but that is a fact. It's a shitty fact, but nonetheless, the second point is that the creator's intent is important, but it absolutely isn't. But it isn't an absolute. I do think important enough to be considered. It's why Bravely, one can argue, is FF or very closely related to FF. It was designed as a spiritual successor to the DS era FF. No, actually, I mean, I very much agree with you that Bravely is like a Final Fantasy game for the record. I just like the only reason I threw that contention out is because like it's like one of those things where the idea of Final Fantasy is like so ambiguous now, where it's like people will say, "Oh, it's just a brand." It's like whatever Square Enix calls Final Fantasy. But then you'll also have something like Bravely, and people will be like, "Oh, but it's just like Final Fantasy gameplay wise." But it's like, is something like Final Fantasy gameplay wise, like 1 through 10 gameplay wise, is that Final Fantasy or is it just the name, right? And if it's both, well, then it's just like, well, then everything is Final Fantasy. So, um, but yeah, I get you, and I honestly don't disagree. I just wanted to mention that. Rigger, thank you for the super chat. I have faith in CB1's ability to make good combat and characters in a new FF. It's the overarching story that I think they still struggle with. Yeah, for sure. I think that they've always been like pretty decent at making like some interesting combat systems. Maybe like and this isn't to say that 13's combat is necessarily the worst. But that was probably their weakest combat. I think they kind of fixed it later on with 13-2 and Lightning Returns and those iterations of the combat. Um, but yeah, I do feel like that 10-2 onward, everything has kind of been building to 7R's combat. And that's kind of like where they hit their peak, their stride with what they're trying to do. So I do think that like with CBU1, you can kind of see like a clear evolution of what they've been trying to get to. Honestly, the thing that's had the most impact on CBU1 in terms of like combat design has been Advent Children. And if you deep read through like a lot of like interviews from like around 13's time, they were like, yeah, like we saw what we were cooking with Advent Children and we really wanted to make a video game that looked like it played like Advent Children. And I think they finally did that with Retrilogy. But yeah, that's like what they've been trying to get to. And I think the Re-Trilogy does have that same visual spectacle from Advent Children, um, while also maintaining the type of gameplay depth that you would want from an action RPG. So I think some people get too hung up on what is and isn't FF. Why I still say people gotta not only be more okay with be wait, I'm not sure. I still say people gotta not only okay more games, but specifically RPGs. Oh, no more RPGs. I adore ease. FF fans would shit themselves and cry over what a real ease games is, with how often those games change up gameplay styles from bump combat to yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's hard to say because um, ease and FF are in like two entirely different positions with what they have to do and what they need to accomplish. So, um, I want FF games that are compelling with the vision. Open world doesn't always mean non-linear. Rebirth is still linear. Uh, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what you mean. Like, I don't think anyone is saying like, I guess you mean like linear exploration or like a linear story, but I don't think that's ever actually been the issue. Like, I don't think anyone like ever expected that out of Final Fantasy. I think that people just didn't like expect like a small ass fucking hallway that you can't that there's no twists and turns and there's like not even like a there's like barely even like a small branch with like a treasure chest and like a bunch of enemies like crowding around it. So I get what you're saying, but I don't think anyone like I don't even think anyone ever expected like I know this isn't necessarily your point here, but I don't even think anyone necessarily ever expected FF to be like a go anywhere, do anything type of thing. I think that most people, when they just talk about the linearity, which again is a terrible criticism because it doesn't really describe the issue, which the issue is mostly just bad level design, which is what people really need to start saying instead of linearity. But that's like the problem with like Final Fantasy 13, for example, is not even like, oh, um, I mean, yes, the bat level design could I mean linear could describe the bat level design because it's literally a fucking brick hallway. It's literally a rectangle like this that doesn't do fucking anything else and it's like 2 hours long to go down like a rectangle like a really long box and then when you get to the end of that box it's another fucking box with nothing but enemies and cutscenes, and there is never any break in the pacing. There's never any town that you visit. There's never even like a thing that you do that's different or like anything else like that, right? So, um, I get why people go and describe that as linear, but like, and linear, it's not technically wrong to say that there's a huge problem with that being linear. But I think people extrapolate that to the fact that like, oh, the story is linear. Oh, the flow of the gameplay is linear. You do everything in a linear fashion. No, no, no. Dog, it's the fact that like the only thing that you do is press forward. Like there is no branching pathway. There is no let me think about this moment. There is no oh, I wonder if there is a piece of materia behind that guy or behind I gotta solve this like little puzzle like really quick if I want to get, the magnified material or something like that. There's never that type of moment. It is literally you are going to be doing the same thing for 60 fucking hours, period. Like that is what people are trying to describe, and it comes out as just linear. Um, and that's not the problem with it, right? Because there's plenty of good linear RPGs, right? Like it doesn't get any more linear than like Persona, for example. Persona is linear as fuck, dude. Calendar games are all fucking linear as shit. But there is still a lot of discovery to be had in those games, right? Like Final Fantasy X, very, very linear game. There's plenty of secrets and things and strategy and things that you can do in Final Fantasy X that make it really interesting, right? But like when people say like linear, like what they're really trying to describe is that, but they just don't have the verbiage to like really describe it. And yeah. I like F13, but nobody describes its issues right when they dislike it, which is why I think uh when I think discussion on it is bad, you're one of the few people who do. Thank you so much. Yeah. And even I get mad as someone who didn't like it when I hear other people who don't like it talking about like why they don't like it. I want to be like, please shut the fuck up. Stop telling people why you don't like it because um you're making the haters look bad because you're not hating on it right. You got to hate on it right. You can't hate on it bad. If you hate on it with like shit like, oh, this is the hallway, oh, it's too linear, then I think that people will dismiss like what you're trying to say, like the good faith critiques that you're trying to say, um, as just being bad faith, like stuff like that. Yeah, I mean with 14's kind of hitting a wall a bit, I think, with a lot of its game design too. And I think that like I think especially Dawn Trail and 16 being back to back probably actually didn't really help CBU 3 that much. Because it kind of really made apparent some of the flaws in their game design, which is like um I think that I think that Yoshi P makes like a very he's very managed in how he approaches the way his teams are going to work on their games. But I can definitely feel that like it might feel overmanaged at times. Like it might feel like, for example, like you know too much of what to expect. Like it is like you know that it's always going to be the same thing. Like you know exactly what they are going to make whenever it comes to a new expansion. And then that also extended to FF16 in like kind of a surprising way. Like kind of a way that like um that it felt like, oh, this is just an FF14 expansion pack kind of way. His methods are a little too calculated. That's a good way of putting it. That's how I feel too. It's a little too precise. And there is a reason that he does that. Ruger, thank you for the super chat. Playing Visions of Mana right now, and I'm surprised that I'm having more fun having a jump button and platforming makes the game instead of just constant combat. I hope FF17 has a jump button and platforming. I think that'd be cool if it did. I agree, Ruger. I would love it for it to be like, okay, we're gonna do like re-trilogy combat, but we'll have a dedicated jump button this time. And I think that alone would actually change enough to make it feel like its own thing, but also still keep that familiarity. And like that's what I'm talking about too, is that like, FF can't stay stagnant. It does have to change, but then it also can't just like dump everything too. There has to be a balance. And I do think that they used to like really get that balance down in like a really good way. And I just don't think that they necessarily do anymore. I don't want to get started on Yoshi P in regards to stuff that they said they were going to do in 14. Like as in you don't like it or you do like it or yeah, oh, I was saying something about Yoshi P. Um I think that he's like really precise in terms of like managing budget and the reason that he's very precise like you always know exactly how many dungeons, how many trials, etc. each expansion is going to have in it. And the reason is because, Yoshi P has even said that essentially they know exactly how many designers they need, how much staff they need in order to work on something. And so it keeps the production moving on time and on schedule and on budget. So it makes things really smooth. From the developer's perspective, it's really good. It's badass, actually. because we're always hitting our fucking deadlines, constantly getting the content out. But from like a player perspective, actually, it can kind of become like this is the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not experimenting enough, you're not taking enough chances. If something requires a little bit more time than it would normally need for you to create something, then it kind of gets brushed under the rug. And so, yeah. Do you recommend FF13 in SP? I recommend playing all Final Fantasy games for yourself whenever possible, if you are a Final Fantasy fan. If you're not a Final Fantasy fan and you're just like a guy who wants a game to play, then no, I don't recommend it. But if you're a Final Fantasy fan, then I recommend like trying like all the FF games for yourself for sure. Because it's just really hard to say like which game will click with like which people. But yeah, if you're just a guy that likes RPGs, then no, don't play it. I don't think it's a good RPG. um, Someone recently, forget who, said the main problem in CBU3, and it is very clear in FF16, is they design games thinking everybody will take from the intrinsic worth of the game is the writing, yes, which for the longest time was true at 14, but people sung the praises of the story nonstop. But they don't design gameplay loops or engage mechanics. They almost design gameplay as an obligation to still call it a game. Yes, Crossy. Yes, 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 yes. That is the problem. That is the problem. That is the problem. They don't design like you have to design a game where it's like even if someone thinks this story fucking sucks, they would still be like, but it's pretty fun though. So I still fuck with it. Marketing is my issue. They talk about the games, but they don't get new audiences invested. They spent the year talking about one aspect of Rebirth in 16. They need better marketing. Josh Z, thank you so much for the super chat. No, for sure. I think Rebirth in particular was like way undermarketed. Um, in fact, I'd probably go as far as to say I don't think there's been a more criminally undermarketed game than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I just don't think Rebirth got the attention that it deserved in terms of putting that game out there. And I think that they spent a decent amount on 16, but yeah, I just don't think that they did enough with Rebirth. I think part of it is just that they have an assumption that Final Fantasy VII is still like as widely known as it used to be. Like, um, now if you go back to like when I was in high school back in the ancient days, if you go back then, right, like Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children had just came out, and like people like Crisis Core like was coming out, and like people fucking knew about like Final Fantasy VII in like a big way, right? I just can't help but think that if you had a graphically scaled down version of what we think of as Final Fantasy VII Remake right now, and you had that running on PS3, everyone would have been like, it would have been like a 20 million unit seller. Everyone would have been talking about how it's the greatest game of all time. you know but that again though, that was like really back when um that was really back when Final Fantasy 7 was like really like everywhere, and everyone was like so obsessed, and um they kind of pushed off doing remake because they were busy working on Fabula Nova Crystallis stuff. And then when they finally did start the re-trilogy, FF7's popularity was not what it was back at that peak, like when Advent Children and Dirge and Crisis Core were coming out, and they were still just milking the fact that people fucking loved Final Fantasy VII. Um, yeah, it's just part of it was that they were too late, and then they didn't reboot the brand hype for Final Fantasy VII, right? Like, I think that's a really big part of it. So, a game that surprised me with how little marketing it got last year was Metaphor. I was really surprised at the massive buzz after release because it was quiet before release. if Metaphor didn't have that buzz, I would probably go out on a limb and say Metaphor would have failed financially. Um, the reviews probably made Metaphor like a profitable game. I would definitely go that far, actually. Um, because Metaphor was not getting the attention it deserved, and a big part of that was Microsoft owning the marketing rights to Metaphor. And I just think that, like, yeah, I just don't think anyone fucking, no one gives a fuck about Microsoft like owning JRPGs. They just don't. They just don't. William, thank you so much for the super chat. Final Fantasy VII Part 3 needs a jump button. Please tell the director and gameplay designer Gengaga and Cosmo Canyon would be so much better with the jump button. William, thank you so much. Hamaguchi follows me on Twitter. Do you guys want me to just add? I can just be like, I could just be like at Hamaguchi. Hey, my guy. Add the jump button. He's so wholesome, by the way. Hamaguchi just shook my nest. Hamaguchi's just such a wholesome, cool guy. He's like, he is the coolest guy like ever. I wonder if Metaphor hadn't updated sales because Microsoft marketing doesn't give it that much more sales. I think that Metaphor would have crossed 2 or 3 million a lot faster had Microsoft not been involved with it. I know they got a lot of free marketing from it, but like we've done this over and over again, guys. Microsoft and JRPG is just not like it doesn't fucking work, man. And if Microsoft was so good with marketing, then maybe their games would be selling and they wouldn't have to be going third party right now, right? Xbox wouldn't be on the verge of fucking death if Microsoft was good at marketing. So, you know, I mean, I get it, but I don't think it was like the best choice that they could have made. Walty Salty, thank you so much. NSP FF7 our reveal trailer has 16 million views. Last of Us 2 has 10 million views. So there was initial momentum. I think you were correct. Culture changed. FF16 reveal has 1.7 million views. Dude, Jose, like, and part of the reason I say this is because as a Final Fantasy content creator who begun my career like around that time and then going into like the release and then up until now, I like saw the culture switch up happening like kind of like first person. Like I saw like I witnessed it. Where people were starting to give like less and less of a care about the brand, people were starting to defect, people were starting to like be like, yeah, I don't give a fuck anymore. I like witnessed that shit in real time. And it was fucking alarming to me. And I was just like, oh shit. And I couldn't really say anything because I felt like, or I did try to say something, but like people would just think I was being a hater. And okay, sometimes I'm a little bit of a hater. I got that dog in me, I do. But I wasn't being a hater. I promise you. I was just being real because I was seeing like the shift and I was seeing like a lot of people like kind of defect and not care anymore and be like, yeah, you know, F Final Fantasy, I'm doing something else now. Um, but I didn't really know to like what extent that translated to sales, right? Like, because it's easy to say, like, oh, there's a fuck ton of Reddit comments where people are saying that, like, they're done and, like, you know, they're tired of waiting or they're tired of, like, or they think it's going to be like Final Fantasy 15 again, which I know that some FF15 fans didn't like me saying that, but like a lot of people actually like this fear of the game being like Final Fantasy 15 was like something that was like really prevalent during the hype of Remake 1 even. And also even during Final Fantasy 16. Like I thought that like, you know, after Remake came out, people would like want to trust Square Enix more because that was such a well-received game. And then like, in terms of like comments, people were like, yeah, I'm not gonna play 16 because 15 was like ass. And I'm like, but it's made by completely different people, right? But that's the thing though, too, is that like you and I and the people in here who like, we're hardcore fucking nerds about this series, like we know it's made by different people, right? But does Joe Internet comment know that it was made by different people under different circumstances? No, right? So a lot of people were just like, yeah, I'm not giving FF16 a chance. FF15 was like incomplete garbage and they sold that to me, and so I'm not buying FF16, right? So, um, and a lot of them even said that about uh remake as well, even though remake is very far. I mean, like in terms of the two games, I would say that remake gameplay wise is even further away from like, what something like 15 is. But yeah, even still, that's what people are saying. William, thank you for the super chat. He follows me too. If we both tell him separately, it might work, but I don't want to do it myself. They need to add a jump button to part 3 when they package 1 through 3. Um, I don't know. I don't think they will add a jump button. I think if they were going to add a jump button, they would have did it with Rebirth, because Rebirth would have been the game to justify the jump button the most. But I'm glad that they added a way for you to manually jump in combat anyway. Like if you hold the square button, I think it was. I haven't touched Rebirth in a while, but yeah, like you hold the square button and that like allows you to jump. I'm really excited for the game to come to PC, by the way, guys. Super excited. Um, but speaking of that, um, William, the only thing I tell him whenever I comment on his stuff is that I want to see him direct 17. That's like my only big message, is that I'm like, please Hamaguchi, make 17. I think it's easy enough to get aerial in combat, and jumping in exploration isn't that impactful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. With Rebirth, they kind of made me be like, okay, I don't think that you need to necessarily jump. But if they make Final Fantasy 17 with the same combat, then I think it would be okay if they added a jump button. But for like the way the game is currently set up, I wouldn't say it's like a deal breaker to not have like a manual jump. That is where FF15 kind of blew its load with the for fans and first timer. For sorry, for fans and first timers, it was a fantastic marketing line, but it needed to be applied to a no doubt banger. Yeah, that is kind of the problem, right? Is that FF15 managed to get the reach because FF15 had the best fucking marketing imaginable. Like the best marketing you could ever possibly get for a video game, period, FF15. And it sold 10 million, which is great. But but how many of those people bought that game and were like, yeah, I'm not buying another one of these? I don't know, right? Because it's hard to quantify. Like, what metric do you use to objectively say, oh, this is how many people who bought it were like not satisfied with like the thing that they got, right? So I don't know which way that you would quantify that, but I will say that if I'm to use anecdotal experience and to think on it from the perspective of the comments I've read and from how the discourse shifted and what people were saying, FF15 essentially had created a situation for Square at the time where every game after that, for a lot of people, they were basically like, it's got to be better than this. Chris Lee, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate it. How are you doing, man? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. So I don't think it's down to any of these individual games, but the reality of the 13 trilogy into 15 into a contentious 7 remake, I think has severely damaged the FF brand in the eyes of newer gamers. These days, I mostly hear FF discussions from existing fans, the loudest voices being from the PS1 era fans as well. Just think two whole generations games that many people did not like were mired online. Doesn't incite conflict, right? There has not been that game where everyone has really been like, this is the uh future of video games has changed everything, and we are just like, oh my god, Chris, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs, dude. Holy shit, appreciate you. Or gift memberships, as they call them on YouTube, using Twitch terminology. Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're the best, man. My guy. I'm assuming that you are the guy that I know IRL. If you are, hello, bro. If you're not, and you just have the same name, also hi. um. Anyway, FF had more than a decade-long dark age, and it'll take a while for trust to come back. Yeah, and that's just all it is, right? Like, that's all it is. Because I mean, some people have said like, "Oh, well, if Re Trilogy combat was so good, why do you think that they're struggling with getting people to play Rebirth if Re Trilogy is so good?" I'm like, dude, it doesn't even have anything to do like if the game is good anymore. Like the game being good now is like semi irrelevant even. I don't want to say like because not fully irrelevant. It's just like partially because the marketing and like the general sentiment of it is just so. Oh, it is you, Chris. All right, hello. Good seeing you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support, bro. Ruger, thank you for the super chat. Holy crap, dude. With crazy ideas like a part 3, secretly a sequel series of FF7 having a big plot details of KH and mobile titles, do you think Square Enix executives need to rein in some of the company's creatives and their wild ambitions? I don't think they need to rein them in necessarily. It just depends on what. I do think that wild ideas are needed, and like big making things as how should I say uniquely Square Enix is still like really important. It just needs to be stuff that doesn't create a barrier for new fans to jump in, right? So I think it's fine that they create new Kingdom Hearts mobile titles, but I think that it becomes not fine whenever that barrier becomes a situation where, oh, well, if you don't play the mobile title, then Kingdom Hearts 4 becomes a less impactful experience for you. That's when I think it can be a big issue, right? Or if 7R is actually a sequel to 7 and it's like, oh, well, you didn't play OG7, so none of this is like really like relevant to you. That's when I think again we can create kind of barriers to like people being able to fully enjoy the experience. So it just depends. I think God of War is kind of like a prime good example of a series and a reboot that became really accessible um despite it being a fourth game in a trilogy that also had a ton of spin-offs and still really accessible. Josh Z, thank you so much for the super chat. 9 Remake will tell me a lot about the health of the franchise because if people don't come back for it, that means the problem is FF specific. I agree. I agree, right? Like if 9 Remake doesn't sell, and especially if it's multi-platform day one and it is like, widely considered a good remake, then that's when like the alarm should be on, essentially. Like that's when we are so fucking cooked. Like that's when we're like done, like Jover, like I don't know what we're gonna do anymore. Situation. M2, thank you so much for the super chat. We need a Final Fantasy Builders like Dragon Quest game. That would be dope. They actually should do that. 100%. I kind of hope them scaling back doesn't mean that we can't get cool, interesting FF spin-offs anymore. I mean good ones. You know, and by scaling back, I mean the number of AA games that they're making that they seem to be scaling back on. Sure seems Hamaguchi is ready to move on after. Not that he isn't going to give part three his all, but he has already talked about needing something new. I mean, from the perspective of Hamaguchi, I believe he said the other day that Hamaguchi has been working on Re-Trilogy for 9 years. I do imagine I do imagine he does want something new at this point. 9 years is a fucking long ass time, dude. He's been working on it for a decade. So, I mean, as a thought exercise, I want you guys to think about like where you were a decade ago in life, right? Like what was going on and like how different your life was a decade ago. Oh shit, CL2314859. Thank you so much for the 5 gift subs, dude. Holy shit. Let's fucking go. God damn, you guys have been popping off this stream. Jesus, man. I just wanted to chat about Switch 2 rumors. And you guys are like raining it down on me. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. You guys are the best. Here's an interesting topic. FF and its current reception in Japan. It isn't doing all too well over there. In fact, Japanese sales, the best-selling SE game since Dragon Quest 11 in Japan was Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D, not 7R or 16 or and not Rebirth. So I wonder what are your thoughts on what are the Japanese thoughts are on FF these days? Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that none of those games are on the consoles that Japanese people play on now, which is the Switch and not PS5 anymore. So, I mean, you could make an argument really that like maybe the issue is not Final Fantasy as much as it is the fact that it's just not available on the hardware that people most frequently play on. So I think that that's also a part of it. So I think that the only way to be completely fair to the brand and like in a scientific matter would be to say how it is going to sell when it is available on Switch 2 day one, right? Like that's the only way we can distill the thing into like this is exactly what it is. Now, if it was available on Switch 2 and it didn't do that well, then that'd be a problem. I would say that like yeah, Rebirth was like the only game in Japan that was not on Switch that was in the top seller list, and I think like the last time that happened was like Elden Ring. So yeah, they should develop 17 with the Switch 2 as the target platform. Yeah, probably so. I think that might be their only like clear way out of this. I think that's a start. The biggest start maybe is to be like, yeah, we're doing Switch 2 development as the primary, you know, system, and then of course it's going to run at 4K 60 on PS5 and on PC, but we're developing it for Switch first, so it has to run on Switch at least 1080p 30. Yeah. So I don't think FF as a brand is dying in Japan, but it can't do much more without Switch 2. Yeah. And also too, I mean, I guess I would describe FF as a brand. Like, I don't even know if I would necessarily use the word dying in general to describe it. So much as like stasis, like, where it's not growing, it's not like diminishing in like such a way where like, it's like not gonna be here, but it's like it, yeah. I don't, and it's not necessarily that I think that like you could probably make a case that it's like dying from like a purely capitalist viewpoint. CL, thank you so much for the 1,000 bits. I appreciate it. Wait, is that also you, Chris? Are you also on Twitch doing this as well as YouTube? Is that you on both? That's the direction Falcom is going with games now. East 10 was developed with Switch first in mind. Same with the New Trails in the Sky remake. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's what Dragon Quest 11 did as well. Well, maybe not necessarily, because Dragon Quest 11 is a scaled down version of the PS4, but Dragon Quest 12 is certainly going to be uh Dragon Quest 12 is certainly going to be Switch 2 developed first, and then it is going to be um upscaled and upresed for PS5, and it's going to look better on PS5. And most people here in the West will probably want to play it on PS5. But yeah, it'll probably be developed with Switch 2 in mind first. I knew it was you, Chris. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I had to think for a second, like, wait, what does CL stand for? It's a good idea from a business perspective. Aim for the lowest common denominator so all their versions can only go up. You're right. And I mean, honestly, it just means that like the version that we're gonna get on PS5 and on PC will be like so optimized and run so fucking good, right? Actually, fun fact about Dragon Quest 11 was the first ever confirmed Switch game, even before any Nintendo games. Oh, that's right. That is true. So it was kind of developed with like Switch specifications in mind. So, but it's funny because I think they started developing it on Unreal, and then the version of Unreal Engine 4 that they developed it on, essentially, if I remember reading it correctly, um, wasn't even compatible with Switch. So they had to upgrade it to a new version of Unreal Engine 4, which is what delayed the Switch version and prevented it from being a launch title. Because originally they wanted to just develop it on Unreal, and the idea was that they could just do that and then deliver it for Switch, but then they couldn't actually, compile the game for Switch because they had a version of Unreal Engine 4 that actually predated Switch support, more or less, is what happened. While these are different games, Cyberpunk sold 25 million, Elden Ring sold 35 million, Baldur's Gate 3 sold over 10 million. So there is a market for games like FF, but it's just not marketed, not multi-platform hurts. I think not multi-platform hurts, but I also think too that I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to describe it. I think that part of it is that like when you look at those games, Rebirth is probably the first title in terms of scope and quality that I would probably put on par with Cyberpunk and Elden Ring and BG3 though. Cuz I don't think never mind, that's going to get me in trouble. I'll just end with that statement. I think Rebirth is like the first one that's like on par with with that type of game. Say it. Okay, I'll fucking say it. I don't think that you can put 16 next to Elden Ring, and anyone who likes like Elden Ring basically I don't think you can put 16 next to Elden Ring. Period. Or BG3 or any of those games. I just don't think you can put it next to them. They blow it the fuck out. Like it's not even close. Um but I do think you can put Rebirth next to those games pretty decently. Based on scale or quality. Both scale, quality, and like a third secret thing too. um yeah, I just don't think you can put it next to those games. Like it just does not stack up next to those games at all. Like pray for NSP's mentions. I know. A lot of people will not like me saying that, but I just fucking said it. So the like BG3 and Elden Ring are deep RPGs and deep action games, and they offer a lot of challenge and interesting things and a lot of depth. Uh, Scope wise, they're tremendously bigger. Quality wise, they're tremendously bigger. Um, yeah, I just don't think that game is like going to like you're not gonna put that game next to BG3 or Elden Ring and be like, oh, this game is as deep and as content dense and has as many interesting things to do. Like, I just don't think that that is like objectively the case. Like, maybe I'm wrong. And as subtext says, my mentions will will tell me. NSP, what system do you play games on most? Steam Deck. Steam Deck. 100 fucking percent Steam Deck, dude. I'm a Steam Deck stan. Other than that, PC, but I play on PC because, um, yeah, and I can have the cloud save sync up between my PC and my Steam Deck. Get ready for the clip of someone doing an unnecessarily long combo in FF16 telling you it has depth. All right. And it does have depth in like the hack and slash sort of way, but like if you're talking about the RPG sort of way and the world exploration sort of way and the like this is my build and this is like the way I decided to progress my characters sort of way that you would get in the games that you listed like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3 or Cyberpunk. I just don't think it's comparable. Like I just don't think it's comparable like at all. I do think Rebirth, though, as a package in terms of like the scale, in terms of the content, it 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 is like maybe like the first FF game that like really is like on par with those. I know that some people will not like. I know some people will not like me saying that. People are really defensive of that game, and I get it, but like, when it comes to stuff like that, like, yeah, I just I think it becomes really clear that it's not on that level. And if you want to make a 10 million plus seller, it does have to be on that level, right? Like it does have to be that type of game where it is an Elden Ring or a Baldur's Gate 3. That's what a 10 plus million seller game is in terms of quality, scope, scale, and that sort of thing. And so yeah, if you want it to be a 10 plus million seller, it does have to stand next to those games. And I don't think that, like, say, 16, for example, does. Jaws Z, thank you for the super chat. You have no idea how much I hope the trilogy explodes after it finishes because it deserves more people playing it. I still can't believe it exists. No, I think the trilogy is really fucking good, man. I think it nails, finally, after a very long time, what, like, a modern FF is supposed to be. Like, what FF in 20 whatever, 2025 going forward should be. Like this is it. This is the perfect modernization of the series that we've been looking for. And I think they need to keep making this sort of thing. Even then, it's not a guaranteed 10 million seller. Exhibit A Rebirth. Yeah. Yeah. And Rebirth is the game that they made where I finally looked at it and said, this is the game that has the power to be a 10 million seller, but it's trapped in being a sequel to a remake sequel. It's trapped in this weirdly tightly defined box of limitation where people have to go and play the first thing, and then it's also a console exclusive, right? Jose, thank you for the gifted membership. I appreciate it. Right? And it basically has like all these things working against it. And it sucks because I'm just like, if they had come out with like a game like Rebirth, and Rebirth was like a numbered mainline entry where you didn't need to know anything. You didn't have to play any previous game. You could just pick it up and play it. It would have sold really well. Do you think they can do what they did with Rebirth with an entirely new game, though? Rebirth relies on a lot of new assets. Yes. So here is part of why. Even though Rebirth has some reused assets, and this blew me away actually to find out. They published all of this in like what was it? Was it CG World magazine or whatever? But actually, all the character models in Rebirth were completely redone. And they actually redid most of the really expensive assets for whatever fucking reason in Rebirth. So Rebirth actually has a shocking amount of assets that you would think would be reused. Like Cloud's character model, right? I thought that Cloud's character model in the first game would be the character model that they used going forward. They would just upgrade that model's textures and stuff. They completely fucking redid the model for the entire cast of the characters, which is insane. I have no idea why they did that because I feel like it only gave marginally better graphics, but they did it. Um, so I think it is possible. I think actually what makes it like a little bit more difficult is that like instead of Rebirth like retelling essentially an established story like Final Fantasy VII, the sort of challenge that a new game would have like Final Fantasy 17 would be more along the lines of they have to come up with something new. And so the coming up with something new would make it take longer, even if they were developing the same amount of content for Rebirth that they were for like FF17, because they'd have to come up with new ideas to fill that space, if that makes sense. Do you think CPU3 single player team is working on FF17 or something wild like an FF version of Genshin Impact, live service, multiplayer action? I don't think we have a good indication right now, Ruger, either way. Also, thank you for the super chat. I don't think we have like a clear indication, but I do think that if I were in charge of Square Enix and I was looking at the current market conditions and I was looking at my teams and I was looking at where things are headed, I personally would probably have CBU3 working on something like a Genshin Impact service Final Fantasy, right? And they already have Ryota Suzuki, and I don't know what he is working on next, but I would definitely have him working on something like that. They have Final Fantasy 14 continuing. I would probably have them working on something that could succeed Final Fantasy 14 if necessary, or fill the void for Final Fantasy 14 as a Final Fantasy service game. So I would have them working on something like that. I think that it would make the most sense for them to work on some type of multiplayer action FF that would complement 14 and bring value to the brand and Square Enix. Right. So I don't know. We'll see. It's probably already in development. A proper game like this with new assets takes 7 to 10 years. Yeah. I hope Gamers Joint is right. We get a Square Enix Presents with some much needed Kingdom Hearts updates. Yeah, I do think that we're going to get something from Square Enix this year because right now, as things currently stand, they don't have anything lined up for release other than Rebirth on PC. And I guess Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD. But that is like not like a full year worth of stuff. I mean, I'm sure that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD will do good, but like a port of a remake and a remake is um yeah, there's got to be something else coming. Got to be. Otherwise 2025 is like bleak for Square Enix. So, um we will likely get Dragon Quest 12 news during DQ Day 2025. Yeah, although I do think that DQ 12 is like years off, like a magnitude of years off. Like I think it's like fucking like 2028, 2029. I think DQ 12 is like way the fuck far off, if I'm completely honest. Maybe they can remake Avengers? Oh god, no. Has Ever Crisis been a financial success? The person to ask about that would be someone like Daryl. Daryl's really good at keeping track of that. Daryl from Final Fantasy Union, that is. He's really good at keeping track at the numbers for all the FF mobile games and all that stuff. I wouldn't know offhand. I know Ever Crisis has had some like really good months and then like some really rough months too. So, but like other than that, I don't know if I'd be able to tell you like how Ever Crisis has been doing financially. So near three, maybe near three is possible because Taro did tease like a major update for 2024 going into that year, and then it didn't happen, right? And so I'm thinking a major update maybe for this year. Maybe near three originally was going to happen last year, and then they pushed it back to this year, which actually seems like a good idea because last year, I mean, the whole stream of games that we had in a consistent row near, I mean, Final Fantasy 16, Rebirth, etc. We do need like a little bit of a break in between that. Um, and then maybe getting near three this year would be good. If Dragon Quest 12 is more than 2 years away, I can see us getting remakes of the, I'm going to butcher this, Zenithia trilogy 4, 5, and 6, which are not only the peak of DQ, but peak of JRPGs in general. Yeah. 9 was rumored like 2 years ago. What is taking so long? 9 has not only been rumored 2 years ago, 9 has also had several rumors and leaks throughout the years. Multiple unrelated leaks. I don't know what's going on with it. I'm actually kind of afraid at this point because all these leaks keep dropping and nothing ever materializes from it. So I'm like, I'm kind of sketched out by it. It just gives me a vibe at this point. But I'm hoping, yeah, I hope that it'll be at like the rumored Square Enix Presents event that's supposed to happen in February. Um, according to Gamers Joint's source that he has. I haven't asked him about it, so but and then yeah, and then there's the FF9 anime too that we're all thinking about, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's happening with that either. That's also like fucked off into oblivion. There is no 9 remake. I mean, it's real, but yeah. Considering having Jared on the podcast. So actually, I'm kind of like working on a thing now in terms of podcast that is going to make it a regular thing. That is like one of my big goals for 2025. It is going to be a regular thing. We are going to have a gaming podcast, um, like a bi-weekly, strictly bi-weekly. Like I promise, this is for real. I'm not going back on this. I promise. It is going to be like a super regular thing now. We have it planned. Um, we haven't officially announced it yet, but right now, like me and Baby Seal, essentially, we're gonna have a thing where we just kind of like regularly discuss video game news, and we're gonna regularly have different industry guests on and different creators and stuff like that. Um, so we're gonna revive, and that's another thing too, is that we're trying to think of a name for the podcast. If you guys got any, we never, because my podcast never officially had a fucking name, like ever. Like I never had like an official name for like what I do here. I called it like Ultima Talks, like Ultima Discussion. I'm like, I don't really fucking know like what the fuck, um, what I even like wanted to like call the podcast, but like, um, so if you have name ideas, submit them. But yeah, so like it'll be me and then Baby Seal and then because he'll basically be my co-host, and we want to like regularly do a podcast together, and it won't just be like Final Fantasy dedicated, by the way. um it'll be like a gaming podcast. Of course we'll talk about like Final Fantasy stuff on there when Final Fantasy stuff is the topic. But ultimately, the kind of goal is to discuss recent gaming news, to kind of dig back on titles that are look back on titles that we like and really dig into them, um, and then to kind of discuss different topics in gaming. So, in other words, it's a video game podcast about video games. And of course, sometimes that'll be dedicated to Final Fantasy whenever there's new Final Fantasy news. So if we have like new like FF7 stuff, we'll talk about that. If we have new um anything else. Yorha, thank you so much for the super chat. Night Seal podcast. Yeah, there you go. There it is. Night Seal podcast. Let's go. M2, thank you for the super chat. With how big Monster Hunter is getting now, I hope Final Square brings back Final Fantasy Explorers in a remake or a sequel. I think that they should do a new Final Fantasy Explorers, but like in like a big way. Because I do think that like making like a Monster Hunter Final Fantasy clone is like not a terrible idea. Especially if you get like some like Final Fantasy jobs in there and like you do some cool stuff. I think it's a cool idea. Schrodinger's Baby Prince, yeah. Um, on top of which, like some of the plans that I have is that I kind of, and this is all tentative right now because I'm thinking about how I want to do it, but essentially, I kind of want to get like a Patreon going for specifically the podcast itself. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do that is because I wanted to be able to pay guests, primarily. That's like one of the big things that I want to be able to do. And not even because I have to necessarily, because a lot of people actually will come on for free. just out of goodwill, just out of like knowing me and like being friends, and they'll be like, yeah, I'll come on for free. However, if we were able to offer any type of compensation, for like 90 minutes or 2 hours of somebody's time, even if it's not that much, even if I'm just saying like, hey, here's 100, $200 or something like that. Um, at the very least, it would make it worth someone's time, you know what I'm saying, to do it. Whereas right now, whenever we invite somebody on, it's them kind of doing a solid for you. And again, anything I can like offer the guest to come on, I think would be great. And not only that, I also think it would allow us to get higher quality guests. Because if we are offering at least a little something, um, it means that I can say, hey, you come on, I'll give you a little money. And people would be like tremendously more likely to do it. So that's kind of like an end goal with it. I'm not saying that like starting out day one that we're gonna like immediately like pay all of our guests like right out of the gate. But that is like an eventual end goal with the Patreon and like trying to get support is that we'll also have some of the money to give to the guests so that we can continue to try to get you guys even better and better guests. And like my end goal would be like if we can ever get developers to come on, if we can ever get prominent actors, actresses to come on, right? So if I can ever have like, you know, voice actors of like famous characters, like Final Fantasy characters, like Persona characters, or like anything that you guys like really care about, or anything like that to talk about the games, you know, shoot for the stars, right? Like we have like Cody Christian or Ben Starr or something crazy like that. Like that's like an idealistic thing I'd like to do. Um, if we could get like, even if we can like get like, and this is like, this would be like way, way fucking end goal. But if we could get like someone like Hamaguchi to ever like sit down with us, um, and just talk about stuff, and it's not like, it's not like we can't reach out to him. It's just more like we'd have to like go through Square Enix's like official channels and stuff, and but like that's like the type of thing that I would ultimately like to achieve with doing a podcast like this. So, um, I want to start it later this month, early next month. It's like the biggest kind of project that I'm hoping to get cooking for 2025, and I am hoping that you guys will support it because the more support that you guys give it, the more that we're going to be able to ultimately provide. We'll probably start streaming it like it'll probably like it'll be on my channel probably like when we do the streams, and then we're probably going to create like a separate third channel that essentially is going to be like a clips channel. So like if you missed it, or if you just want to like, you know, send somebody like a specific topic that we talked about, you'll be able to do that. So yeah, it's gonna be hype. That's like one of the big things that I have coming for you guys that I think is gonna be really cool. So um and of course we'll be collaborating with other content creators. So if you guys like, the people that I've had on before, like Susie or like Mike or like those sorts of people, I'm gonna invite them on. Make YouTube shorts of the podcast. It'll do number. Oh, for sure, for sure. That's like another thing too. Is that like once we get like a Patreon going, it's gonna allow us to pay like an editor to kind of um just like focus on making shorts. I wish I had like somebody who was just dedicated to making shorts of me, because if I did, oh, if I did, I'd have so many more subs. But like taking time away from videos to make shorts, kind of hard, right? But like if I just had somebody who was just like, hey, cranking them out. Yeah, so hopefully like we will have, like a dedicated person that's just like, yeah, I'm gonna crank out some fucking shorts. You have to have Temple Run 2 playing in the background. True. Very true. Then now it's really formulated for the TikTok brain. Oh my God. Yeah. So that's like what we're hoping to accomplish. And again, it'll be a bi-weekly thing. It'll be like strictly I'm thinking that the runtime will be strictly 90 minutes, because whenever we do have a podcast on here, it always runs for 3 to 4 hours. And don't get me wrong, every single time it's running for 3 to 4 hours, it is because me and my guests both are usually so fucking locked in that we don't give a fuck. We're just having a really good call, right? We're just having like a really good time talking to each other, because, most of the guests are personal friends of mine, and we just really lock in, and we have like really in-depth conversation, and it just clicks with us and we have a great time. And so, yeah, that's why it runs sometimes for 4 hours. However, again, for the sake of being able to do it bi-weekly, I think I'm going to cap it at like 90 minutes to 2 hours max. And that's just because if we do that, then it can allow us to not burn ourselves out, right? Because if we're doing 4 hours, if we're doing 3 or 4 hours each time, then we're gonna burn ourselves out faster. Guests will get burned out. It also makes it harder for guests to schedule in the time, right? Like when you have like a 90-minute affair, like it's kind of easy to squeeze into things, right? You can do that in between a work day. You get home from work or whatever, or you finish making content for the day, and then you could like do the podcast before making dinner, right? Awesome. Really easy. You can do 90 minutes on a weekend between doing all your other stuff. But if you have to sit there for like 3 or 4 hours, and like it's gonna be locked in, and it's gonna be something like that, it gets really difficult to dedicate the time. So probably 90-minute episodes, but it is going to be 90 minutes for the sake of um, keeping it regular. Fake friends per second. That's funny. We had a couple of names that we kind of like sorted through, but like we haven't like settled on anything. So like some of the names that we had include um I had came up with one where it was like active time banter. Yeah, no, I don't know. Ultima Cast is not bad. Um I guess that's really it. That's like the only decent one. Um right, cuz I didn't want it to be like strictly Final Fantasy. Like it is only a Final Fantasy thing. If you know what I mean, right? Like it's fine if it has like FF undertones to it, but part of the goal too, I think, with the podcast is to like, because we won't always be talking about like Final Fantasy every episode. Although I do think it will come up in many episodes, and it probably will be centered to many episodes. But like every episode's not going to be like, we're talking about like a Final Fantasy 7 trilogy again. No, no. So it's not going to be that, but it will be a bit more general gaming discourse. Turn-based conversation. Yeah, turn-based talks was like one that was thrown out there in terms of names. The Gigacast. I kind of like that. Turn-based dads. I'm not a dad. Some may call me daddy, but I'm in fact not a father. L3 plus R3 to accept the truth. Nah, brother. We're pressing L4 plus R4 and accepting too much truth. We're accepting the truth of the universe. Kind of like how Sphere Hunter does Resident Evil content primarily. Well, I mean, she used to do Final Fantasy content primarily, and then it became about Resident Evil. So, um, her name was accurate for the time when it matched, the primary thing that she was doing. All right, guys, I know what we're gonna call it. I got a good name. We're gonna call it the Woke Chad Podcast. I hope you guys are excited. Uh, nah. No, we did joke though. We were like, I nutted to that name. I know, me too. Oh man, that would actually be sick. Oh man, no. Like, if we really wanted to just be fucking trolls, like that's exactly what we would name it. Like, if honestly, if I just wanted to be like, if I just wanted to be the biggest fucking troll and I didn't care about morals or being a like legitimate person and I just wanted money and views, that's exact that's the exact type of like I'm just gonna piss people off to get attention type thing I would do because I wouldn't care. Honestly, I would name it that anyway just to be funny, but people don't like humor, so that wouldn't work. Active Time podcast. Yeah, I mean that's actually a good one. That's actually one that I have like wrote down. So, in terms of like potential names. Hey, SB, I was wondering why in FF writing they have this really good mature story of say Shinra of Avalanche and Shinra, then muck it up with Evangelion stuff like Sephiroth and really? I'm kind of confused because I think that well, first of all Evangelion stuff is cool to me. So I don't know. I think we have different times. NSP, it's grift. It's it's time to grift, bro. You're right. What I was describing was basically just grifting, right? Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that because um I'm a human being with like morals and shit. Uh yeah, it's funny because as much as Twitter insists that it likes humor, Twitter actually fucking hates humor. Like they can't even like fucking handle it. The Evangelion stuff ruins it. It's why I hated Endwalker. Man, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would kind of want to ask, like, do you like JRPGs? Because I feel like that kind of stuff is like so central to it. Um, and like not just central to it, but like kind of like JRPGs at its best, actually. I love Stormblood more than Endwalker. Okay, well, I mean, You're an outlier. That's like the only way to like really describe it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's good to be an outlier. Sometimes the most based people in the world are outliers who like fundamentally don't understand why everyone else thinks the way they do. And we actually need those people sometimes because sometimes they're the ones who are onto things that the rest of the herd simply can't even process or really understand because we're all stuck in like the same type of thoughts that um, don't really lead us to new places. So it's good. It's good that um, you are not like the herd. I think that's good. That's good, and you should embrace it. That being said, if you tell people that you love Stormblood more than Endwalker, you're probably gonna get some very interesting replies that may not be too conducive to your mental state. But if you do like something more grounded, I would recommend you play Metaphor Refantasio. And the reason I'd recommend playing Metaphor is that with Metaphor you don't get I don't think it's a spoiler to say you don't fight God or anything like that. It doesn't get like that fantastical in terms of like Metaphor's like thing. Is actually one of the things I fucking love about the game. There is no, yeah, so it's not going to get to that point where it's like you're doing like, well, I won't say that it doesn't get to like Evangelion level like stuff at some points in some ways, but it's actually pretty grounded. Not to spoil it, obviously, but you're not going to kill God or anything crazy like that. It's actually one of the most grounded JRPGs ever. NSP, have you tried FF16 on Steam Deck? No, but from everything I've read, it runs at 20 frames per second on Steam Deck. It's not a great experience on Steam Deck, unfortunately. Please tell this person to never voice their opinion publicly. They'll be hazed. I just saw that they don't like Graha. That's a sin in the FF14 community. Brave, not gonna lie. Yeah, Graha is protected, dude. Graha is protected. You can't not like Graha. They will come for you if you don't. All right, so we're gonna let's do. Okay, I think we're going to end the stream here. Thank you guys for joining. Look forward to the podcast. We're gonna be back later this week again, probably on Friday, and then next week we have, or actually we'll be back when the Switch 2 is supposed to be revealed on Thursday, and then we'll be back again on the Thursday because the Xbox Direct is gonna happen. All right, I'll see you guys then for Nintendo and for Xbox.